Hi everybody, this is Tor Storley and I am back with another video. Okay, so I'm back, and in this video we want to look at the concept of models. Models in dbt are the cornerstone of dbt. That's the basic SQL statements that uses Jinja references to basically build on the top of other queries, etc. So what I want to do then is I want to go into this second section here, which is the core flow. And if you look down here, these are commands you can use. And one of them is called dbt run. Okay. Now, before we go ahead and confuse ourselves, let's get an overview of some of this stuff. Towards the end of this document, I have laid out the workflow. So in other words, commands you can use that works for different purposes. You have this dbt debug, where you can verify configs and duckdb connections. dbt deps, which we covered in previous video, where we had packages from third party installed. Then we have dbt seed, which loads CSV files that you put in the seed folder. Now, there might be other objects you can use here too, but for our purpose, it's CSV files. Then dbt run, it's a quicker version than dbt build. Build will run everything, but the dbt run will build all the models unless you specify specific models. dbt test will validate the data quality, and again, we'll look at the YAML files to figure out, based on each column, which tests will be performed based on those third-party expectation packages that we imported. And you also have docs generate, and I believe I covered this one in a previous video. I don't know if it was number 2, maybe, something like that. And docs serve as well. I covered both of these before, but we'll look a little more into docs when we get closer to it. All right, then you have daily development loops. So you can say dbt compile, but you can use this select keyword like -- select to specify a portion of what you want to run. So for example, if you want to run a specific model, you can use dbt run and select a model like this, okay? For test, you can do the same. You can select what you want to run, and you can also preview output rows, as you can see, using this show method. And of course, dbt build runs everything. We'll get back to this materialized section because there are 4 ways you can make your objects into 4 different things, if you will. Views, which is the default, I believe. Tables, incremental, meaning if you're gonna append to fact tables. We'll talk some more about this one, but it's not really a physical object per se. So what I want to say then is there are ways you can give dbt instructions of how you want to run this stuff. For example, if you want to run a single model like this, you can say dbt run and then select keyword and my model. But you also, if you remember from that graph I showed you, let's just bring it up and we'll look as we go here. So let me open and let's see if it actually generates the documentation for us. dbt docs serve and see if that works. So I'm running docs serve and it should fire up the browser and hopefully, yeah, okay, it looks a little better now. So as you can see, now we're getting the documentation here. So if you look on the project here, you can see here's the Jaffle shop with the models, the seed files, and staging and so forth. I want to maximize this lineage graph. So when you look at this graph here, let's say you're on staging customers. When you go to your left, that's your parents. That's your upstream, as it's called. On the right-hand side is the downstream. So in other words, this one is the parent of this one, which is the parent of this one, okay? So these 3 are combined into this child, if you will. And down here, you have different things you can do. And you see down here, there's plus customers plus. Now, depending on what you're doing down here, it will show you different things. So when we say you're going to run those models, that's what we're talking about. Which model are you going to run? Let's say if I want to only run this one, right? Then I can select just that model like this. If I want to select all upstream models like this, and if you look at this guy, if I want to run all, if you look at this guy, and if I want to run all the upstream models, I will have to run all of these guys. Okay, everything to the left of this model here is basically what I want to run. If I just want to run downstream model, this is the only one I'm going to run. And you do that by saying, select my model. And you put the plus sign after the word. That runs the downstream models. You see that? If you run everything, upstream and downstream, you could do plus my model plus like this. So if I did this, for example, let's see if that actually works. So if I go here, right, under customers, you can see it will run this downstream model because I put the plus sign after. What if I put it before, okay, like this, and then update the graph? See, now it will go to the parent and run that one. So there is a system here with these pluses and minuses, as you can see. So that's something you should know about. Here you can see different variations of this. Run everything upstream and downstream. You do the plus on each side. You can also run all the models within a folder, for example, the staging folder like this. And if you remember the staging folder, that looks inside this staging folder. That's this model, and this model. So that's, you can also run that. And you can run this in your terminal where you can select these models to run. And partially you can do it on this graph too, but not all of the commands will work there. So I just want to point that out. And now let's look at some of these models. Let me make it a little smaller. It's a little large, isn't it? Okay, so if you look here now on the models, the basic structure here is that you have a seeds folder that has 3 CSV files. So customers look like this, orders looks like this, and payments looks like this. The amounts here are in cents, not dollars, okay? And if you look at the models here, this is in the staging folder. When you create this model, look what it does. It can also refer back to other models or other objects. In this case, you're referring back to the raw customers. Now, what is the raw customers? Well, the raw customers comes from this seeds folder. And notice there's a raw customer right there, which is basically a CSV file, right? Now, the staging orders is very similar. So the only thing you really do here is you're creating a common table expression. You call it source, and then it basically queries everything from that CSV file called raw customers. And then you're creating a follow-up query inside this common table expression, a second query called renamed, which basically queries everything from the first query, which is called source, which has a reference to the CSV file. And then from there, you always run a final query over whatever you want to get as a final output. And that's called select star from renamed, which is basically this one. So it basically builds on the top of one another. Staging orders, same thing, very similar, very basic. Only difference there in payments is that they added this column here. By taking the amount column and divide on 100, you get the actual dollar amount instead of the cents. And then you query it. So the whole staging models here are these 3. In your DBT project file, you can see here, this is where you lay out your project. So you have the models path, seeds path, tests path, analysis path, and macros path. Then you have where you wanted the final output to go in the target folder. And it also gives you a couple of other things here. For example, this one we're going to get back to with the materialization here. But it basically tells DBT whether or not it should create a table out of the model or a view out of the model, okay? And we'll get back to the rest of this stuff. So the idea here is this is what we call a materialization, okay? What the final outcome will be. And what we're saying here is inside this Jaffle shop, the final output should be tables. From the staging, when you compile those models, it will turns into views. So how do you know what happened? Well, if you go to the target folder, remember inside the staging, you said you wanted to be view because that's what this is indicating. Under the staging folder, everything should be a view. So this is like a default thing. You can manipulate individual objects too. You can make a table and view and so forth, but that's more advanced. But right now, you want to create the views. Why? because you don't really want a final table every time you run this, because it's an intermediate step, and you just want to have a view that will create the final table that everybody's going to be querying. So if you look here now, this one, when it's finally built, remember it had Jinja connotations before, where it says select from the reference and then the raw file type of thing. Well, this is what it converts into. Select star from jaffleshop.main.raw customers. So basically this becomes the final query that you will run to get the data and so forth and build a table. And you can see here it's been translated to, and here it's been translated into actual text representation instead of just references to Jinja syntax. And then when you get to the final one, notice these are view, because it's in the staging folder. And then when you get to the finals outside the staging folder, that's what we said, the materialized into tables. So here you create a table, and this is the name that DBT gave it. And you can see here is how it finds replaces with the actual values they're going to be using. So that's how it builds these models, okay? So we'll keep looking at this. I hope this helped a little bit. And if it does, you can see here some additional stuff here, case statements and so forth. We'll get back to some of this stuff when we look at testing. And if you like my videos, please give me a like and consider subscribing to my channel. It'd be fantastic. Look forward to see you in the next video. Take care, everybody.